Hey, this is Regina White Favors with a new series. The series is titled What Do You Bring to the Table? And it is part of the Overcoming Rebound Relationships curriculum and then also the Toxic Encounters books. And you can find those tabs marked as rebounding and also toxic encounter books on my website, reginawhitefavors.com. So, this particular series I thought is very interesting because there's this sort of ongoing social media discussion concerning men asking women what do they bring to the table, and it segues into conversations about submission and how most men want a submissive wife or partner. They're not always inclined to transition the individual into becoming a wife, but they want the individual or the woman to be submissive. And so it has transitioned into those types of discussions of submission and also tradition, that they want a traditional wife. And many people define tradition or a traditional wife as someone who cooks and cleans and stays at the house. They tend to be a housekeeper, homekeeper, a housewife. But I noticed that there's an irony to the discussion about what do they bring to the table, because most men who ask that question tend to label themselves or categorize themselves as alpha men, and they still, when a woman responds with the fact that she makes a certain income or she works a certain job or she has education, the men will say, well, that's not important to alpha men, right? Or that's not important to men just in general. And the irony that I find very interesting is that these men want a traditional submissive wife, but they also want her to work. They don't want the 50s, 40s, 50s type of wives who stayed home where the man went out and he was the breadwinner. What they want is still the woman to work and still the woman to be able to tend to the home, tend to the husband in a very traditional way, not have any true independence or anything like that. But when a woman says, well, she makes a certain amount of money or she has education, they sort of mock and scorn and look down on that. So I've been thinking about this series for a good while and just kind of listening to discussions and being sort of turned off by those discussions, as well as wondering, I mean, do people really know what they want? The most important thing that people need to understand is that you are always 100% responsible for yourself. So that means you need to do all that you need to do to ensure that you establish you. Just because someone decides to get an education or make a lot of money doesn't mean that they think that person is better than you. That's what you're supposed to do as an adult. You're supposed to leave your parents' home, get a job, go to school, get your own apartment, get a house, get a car, pay bills. That's what you're supposed to do. And so this discussion about what do you bring to the table is something that I want to explore. I don't know if I'm going to turn it into a script or something, but I have created a workbook companion that I'm going to introduce you to in a few slides. So this is what do you bring to the table, and this is preparing your table for engagement. And your table for engagement depends on where you are in your development. If you are preparing your table for engagement, if you are in your 30s or your 40s, well, it is, you've likely already received your education or completed your education, and so now you are already establishing yourself. So now you are at a 30s mindset, or if you're in your 40s, you're at a 40s mindset. So how you perceive the world and how you engage with another person is going to be a lot different than the person who is in their 20s, right? So preparing your table means whatever it means in terms of the particular topics we're going to discuss, but also just your table in terms of your mindset. your mentality about relationships, about relationship building. If you're the type of person who quits relationships after a certain time and you don't have a record of staying in a relationship longer than 6 months, that is your table. And so you're going to have to really address that part of your um, emotional development. So this is, what do you bring to the table? Preparing your table for engagement. So the curriculum is based upon the research I did for rebounding and rebound relationships. And that research you can find under the rebounding tab. And the rebound relationship research focuses on understanding the table. So this is the table that we're at as two partners. One of the partners is a rebound, and the other partner is a member of a core relationship. And so when you are engaging in relationships, especially romantically, and you don't know that the partner is already engaged with someone else, and that can be as in marriage, or it can be just in a long-term relationship, it's time to really think about what's going on with the table that you're sitting at. So that's understanding the table. And then the Toxic Encounters books um, do derive from that research. And so I go over that at the end of the presentation here. But it's Overcoming Rebound Relationships curriculum, and it is when you need to leave the table. So the three books, three titles under the series, the Bait, Hook, and Switch series, focus on rebound relationships, why people pursue them, focuses on also adult attachment, and then encourages the reader to go no contact. So this is the curriculum in addition to the workbook companion. So here's the workbook companion. What do you bring to the table? This is the series, and then this is taking many of the ideas that I have in this presentation and putting it into book form. So it's about 130 pages, and it is available on Amazon. So, what is your romance table? So, your romance table does matter as well. So, the romance table can be anything from what you believe romance is for you. It's very general, romance table as a question, but I guess it just depends upon uh, the relationship. A lot of times, if you get certain questions asked early, sometimes it's funny how we would rather engage in sexual um, activity, but not talk about what we like sexually. And we wait till we get into the marriage, and the person wants this, right? And you want this, but neither one of you wants to serve the other person. Uh, to give the other person what each person wants, right? If you get early what is romance for someone, what it means for that person, again, I think you will fare better. Also, though, you need to know I don't think you necessarily need to know someone's body count, but I do think you need to know what may be some sexual triggers, right? If a person is the type of person who's um has a porn addiction, or they masturbate, or they do a number of things outside of a relationship that has now become a crutch, that has now become a soothing mechanism for them, you're going to have issues with intimacy, because two partners are supposed to come together and be intimate with each other. You're no longer supposed to be intimate by yourself. And that goes back to the single argument. There are things that you did as a single individual, and then there are things you're going to do as a married individual, married person. And so when you're still activating certain strategies that kept you, however way they kept you when you were single, and you're trying to bring that into the marriage, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be immediate conflict. You're, it doesn't make any sense to bring in porn from your single life into your married life. I understand that people do it, right? And they believe it spices up the marriage, all that kind of good stuff. The problem with that though is that the man, for example, who is watching porn is connecting more with the two people who are doing porn or doing sex or having sex than the man is connecting with you. Just because he sees that and he watches that and then now he wants to replicate it, mimic it, doesn't mean that he's being intimate with you. He's just replicating what he saw on the TV. And so then he gets into it. It becomes no different than the video games that men love to play. They want to replicate, especially when it comes to uh, basketball video games, um, wrestling video games, car racing video game, all those different type of video games, and all they're trying to do is mimic what they see on the screen outside of the screen. So then you acquiesce and you become a participating partner in his mimicry, but then you are left to your own devices to get you to a place where you can release. Whereas if you leave whatever it is that you use as a crutch prior to the relationship, to the marriage, if you leave that behind, leave, kind of like a suitcase, you, or old clothes or anything, if you leave that behind and you come into the relationship ready and prepared to serve each other and love each other and be there for each other, be intimate with each other, then that's your romance. Your romance is not just going out once or twice a month on date night. It's not just coming home and cooking a special dinner, right? It's not just wearing a fancy negligee, right? Uh, See-through negligee. It's not just having a stripper pole in the house. It's not. That's not completely romance. Romance. What is your romance table? Really hints at intimacy. What is your intimacy? Um, because a lot of times I notice that all of us, as frail and flawed human beings, will give everything, we'll give our all to people who don't care about us, who don't want us, who don't want to be with us, or people we don't care about and we don't want to be with. We'll give our all. We'll give them the very best. But then when we get the person that we really want to be with and love, or we feel like that we love, we tend to be shy. We don't want to give everything. We are offended that the person is asking of us to do that. It's so many, things that go with that. And I just think to myself, so you did all this over here with this person for 2 years, 8 years, or whatever, and here it is, you're married, and you don't want to do it with your husband because you left your intimacy on the porn TV, or you left your intimacy on the with the old partner, or you left your intimacy when you used to serve yourself, so to speak, right? That's where you left your intimacy. Your intimacy no longer, you don't feel like you need to be intimate with now a marital partner. That's strange. I don't know why we think that way, but it's interesting that we would rather spend all our time over here in one thing over here and give it our best. I mean, give it our best. Give it our best time, give it our best money, give it our best body, give our, I mean, our very, they're going to get 100. It's not going to be 100%. It's going to be 200%. But when we get over here in a marriage, we barely give anything. It's almost like we are offended at having to leave the intimacy that we built in one area of our life to now create intimacy in another area of our life. It's kind of like, what's a good example? A good example would be, um, a partner and a you have a marriage, husband, wife, husband decides to cheat, and the mistress is saying that the husband has a duty to her, not the wife. And the more that the wife um asks for consideration as a wife and for him to make a decision, it's almost like the husband is offended that the wife is asking him to perform husband duties to her as a wife, and that he's already created in his mind that he should serve intimacy to his mistress, and that she's more deserving, and that he has a duty more to her. He's offended at it. And that's what happens, that we have married ourselves to something else that we did prior to the relationship. We've married ourselves to that. It can be marriage to masturbation. It can be marriage to porn. It can be marriage to situationships. It can be marriage to an ex-partner who no longer wants us, right? It can be marriage to an idea that we really wanted to be with that person over there, but that person is no longer available. It can be it could be whatever it is that you feel like you have more loyalty to and duty to, that you hold that in higher regard, versus now you're in a marriage and you don't feel like that the person that who you're with, is deserving of you 100%, and you are offended that the person is asking you to have a duty towards them, right? The guy that I was in relationship with, he was in some kind of relationship with me, but his ex, who wouldn't take him back, kept saying to him that he had a duty to her and not me. Even though she had already made a decision in her mind that she was not going to be with him anymore, she still felt like he had a duty to her. So it was like he felt offended at me asking for him to be a partner to me, and he felt more of a duty to serve her and give her what she wants. And so you have your romance table. You really got to get a good understanding of what's going on. That means you are really addressing you. It's not so much as the outside performer of you. It is the inside understanding of you and what you believe romance is for you. So, what is your romance table? So these are the toxic encounter books that I mentioned earlier. This is Toxic Encounters: Why People Pursue Rebound Relationships, Part 1. Then Toxic Encounters: Adult Attachment and the Problem with Rebounding, Part 2. And then Toxic Encounters: Why You Should Go No Contact Post Rebounding, Part 3. So this is part of the Overcoming Rebound Relationship curriculum. And these were the three initial books in terms of research, where I go over um, rebound relationships, how it relates to adult attachment, and that's why we tend to stay in those types of relationships, because we become attached. Is usually an insecure attachment, and you can chart the insecure attachment from your childhood to your adulthood. Then, of course, going no contact. Visit, subscribe, and follow. So this is the standard logo for the Regina White Favors website. And so you can also visit me on Facebook, Arthur Regina White Favors, YouTube, Regina White Favors channel, and then our Amazon Author page, amazon.com /Arthur Regina White Favors. Thank you very much for listening.